It was a warm summer evening when a group of friends, Mike, Emily, Alex, Sarah, and Mark, decided to take a shortcut through a nearby forest. They were on their way home from a weekend getaway and were eager to avoid the long and winding road that would take them back home. Mike had heard of a shortcut that would shave hours off their trip, and so they set out into the forest with high hopes. At first, the drive was peaceful and serene. The sun was setting, casting a beautiful orange glow across the trees. The group laughed and chatted, enjoying the scenery and each other's company. Emily pointed out a deer grazing on the side of the road, and Mark joked,
Maybe we should have brought a hunting rifle with us. We could have fresh venison for dinner.
Alex shook his head.
You know I'm a vegetarian, Mark. I don't want to be a part of that.
Sarah rolled her eyes.
Can we please focus on finding our way out of this forest instead of arguing about dinner?
The group chuckled, and Mike reassured them.
Don't worry, guys. We'll be out of here soon. This shortcut will take us straight to the highway.
But as they drove deeper into the forest, they noticed that the air was growing colder and the trees were getting denser. The atmosphere was thick and ominous, and they could feel something sinister lurking just beyond the trees. Despite the unnerving feeling, they continued down the winding dirt road, trusting that Mike's shortcut would lead them back to civilization in no time. As they drove deeper into the forest, the car began to shake and sputter. They stopped to check the engine but found no problems. They continued on their journey, but the car continued to shake and jerk. Mark looked out the window.
Guys, this forest is really creepy. Do you think we should turn back?
Mike responded,
No way, we're almost there. We'll be out of here in no time.
As they drove, the atmosphere grew even more sinister. The trees were blackened and dead, and the shadows seemed to stretch out impossibly far. They passed by an old abandoned cabin and noticed strange symbols painted on the walls. Suddenly, they heard a blood-curdling scream from within the cabin, and the group panicked. Sarah shouted,
We need to get out of here, now.
Mike quickly turned the car around, and as they drove away, they caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure in the window. The road grew narrower and the darkness intensified. The moon was the only source of light, casting an eerie glow across the forest floor. The group began to feel uneasy, but they were determined to find their way out of the forest. As they reached a clearing in the forest, they decided to stop for a break. They built a fire and sat around it, hoping to ease their nerves. But soon, they heard strange noises coming from the woods. Emily whispered.
Do you guys hear that? It sounds like someone is out there.
Alex replied.
It's probably just an animal. Don't worry about it.
Suddenly, they saw a figure standing in the shadows, a tall, dark figure with glowing eyes. Mike grabbed his flashlight and shone it in the figure's direction, revealing a malevolent spirit that preys on their darkest fear. The spirit seemed to feed on their fear, growing stronger with each passing moment. Mark shouted,
We need to get out of here. Don't start the car.
But the car wouldn't start. The group was trapped in the clearing, unable to leave as the spirit grew stronger and more powerful. They tried to fight back, but their efforts were in vain. The spirit began to speak, its voice deep and menacing. You have entered my domain. You will never leave alive. The group was terrified, huddling together as the spirit circled around them. It seemed to know their darkest fears and used them to torment and terrorize them. Emily was paralyzed with fear as the spirit whispered her deepest secrets into her ear. Sarah screamed as the spirit conjured up images of her loved ones dying in horrific ways. Mark was frozen with terror as the spirit showed him his worst nightmares, coming to life before his eyes. Alex was the only one who seemed unfazed. He had always been skeptical of the supernatural and refused to let fear get the better of him. He stood up and faced the spirit, saying,
You have no power over us. We will not be afraid.
The spirit laughed, a deep and mocking sound. You are all afraid, whether you admit it or not. I can sense it, I can smell it, and I will use it to destroy you. The group huddled together, trying to come up with a plan. They knew they had to do something, or they would be trapped in the forest forever. Mike spoke up.
I have an idea. What if we confront our fears head on? Maybe if we face them, the spirit won't have any power over us.
The group was hesitant, but desperate. They agreed to try Mike's plan, and each of them began to face their fears. Emily talked openly about her anxieties and insecurities. Sarah confronted the guilt she had been carrying around for years. Mark let go of his past traumas, forgiving those who had hurt him. As each member of the group faced their fears, the spirit grew weaker and weaker. Its hold over them was weakening, and it began to fade away into the shadows. Alex smiled.
See? I told you, it was all in our heads.
The group laughed, relieved to have made it out of the forest alive. They piled back into the car and drove away, grateful to be leaving the haunted forest behind them. But as they drove away, they couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. They knew they had faced their fears, but they also knew that the spirit was still out there, waiting for its next victims. And they couldn't help but wonder who would be next to face its wrath.